Welcome, I'm Jan Marini, the founder of Jan Marini Skin Research. I am here with Paula. Paula's here for her consultation. So Paula, tell me a little bit about yourself. You're a PE teacher.
I'm a PE teacher. I've been teaching PE to elementary school students for about 30 years. Today was my last day for this year. I spend a lot of time outside in my life. I am an exerciser. I like to swim and hike and bike when I'm not teaching, and read and garden. Those are the kind of things I like to do.
And I thought it was really interesting. I was telling Paula that when I grew up, and I was born and raised in San Diego, we didn't have actual dedicated PE teachers until I was in junior high, which back then was 7th grade. And you were saying they have PE teachers in many of the districts here in grade school,
right?
Which is, I think, is great. So, Paula, I'm going to ask you a few questions about your skin. If there was something you could change or improve about your skin, what would it be?
It seems kind of dry to me. I've been outside, like I said previously, a lot. The wrinkles and brown spots, maybe, too.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to change or improve?
Mostly, I think, facial skin. My skin on my legs, too.
Okay. How do you feel about the texture of your skin as far as pore size, those kinds of things?
Yeah, I'd like to be able to change that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what is it about the texture? Is it, do you feel your pores are too large? Do you feel that the texture isn't as smooth? What
Probably
is it?
not so smooth and maybe too large, yes. Exactly.
So smoother texture and smaller pores. You've ever had any acne?
A long time ago, when I was a teenager.
And
not so much as an adult.
Okay. And acne as a teenager, was it just very mild? Was it?
I would say it was very mild.
Okay.
Yeah, a little bit on my back as well.
Okay. And as an adult, if you break out, do you still break out occasionally, or pretty much?
Very rarely.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe one little spot here or there, but pretty rare.
And how would you categorize your skin? Do you think it's more normal? Do you think it's dry? Do you think it's oily?
I think it's dry.
Okay. Do you think it's dry everywhere?
Yes.
So you don't really have any place, like in the T-zone, where you tend to get it all shiny?
Not really.
Okay. Okay. And have you ever been a smoker?
Never.
And now you say you're outdoors a lot, but have you ever been a sunbather?
Yes, definitely.
And has that been...
As a young person.
Okay, as a teenager?
Teenager, and beyond, maybe into my 20s. Love the sun.
Okay. So tell me what you use. What do you wash with in the morning?
I wash with some Derme, I think it's called. I got it at Whole Foods.
Okay.
And sometimes I've also used Cetaphil that was recommended by my dermatologist.
Okay. So now Cetaphil is kind of a creamy texture, even though it's oil-free. Is the Derme sort of creamy?
No.
Okay.
Really. I would say not.
Is that a gel or?
It's more of a gel, yeah.
Okay. Now usually gels are for all skin type. Which one did you find made your skin less dry? Or did you notice a difference?
I don't think I noticed a difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, when you say that your dermatologist recommended Cetaphil, which Cetaphil is a really good, just neutral cleanser. It's great for people with sensitive skin. Did you see your derm for anything in particular having to do with your skin?
Well, the last time I saw my dermatologist, I was just coming off of Plaquenil. I think I mentioned that to you on the phone. And she had me talk to my rheumatologist about discontinuing it, so I have, and I've also been trying to, she has given me bleach to see if I can lighten the skin around my mouth.
Okay. Okay, so some type of hydroquinone.
Okay. 4%.
I'm writing. I'm not ignoring you, I'm just writing. So what do you do after the cleanser in the morning?
I put on sunscreen, and I put on a little bit of light makeup that has sunscreen in it as well.
Okay, so sunscreen, and what is the sunscreen brand, do you recall?
Neutrogena.
Okay, SPF what?
110, I think.
110.
Yeah, that's what my dermatologist told me to buy last time. Is that true? 105, 110,
Well,
something like that?
I've not heard about 110. Now, I've heard of some 90s. So just so everyone is aware, with regard to sunscreen, I believe that you should wear at least an SPF 30. And primarily because nobody really puts enough on. So if you put using an SPF 30, you're going to get enough of the coverage. The difference between an SPF 30 and a 50 or a 75 or 100 is infinitesimal.
Right, I've heard that before.
Yeah. The important thing is that it needs to be broad spectrum, because you could be wearing an SPF 100 and it doesn't mean that it's going to cover you in the UVA range. And so even though you're not burning, you could be absorbing UVA damage, which goes through the windshield of your car, can go through light clothing, same intensity all year round, and same intensity all day long, not just at 12 noon or 10 a.m. And so it goes into your DNA, it just damages, and it causes the discoloration and the lines and wrinkles and all the things that, you know, we are trying to overcome. So it's just really important that it has that broad spectrum and it gets the highest rating. Sunscreens are over-the-counter drugs. They're regulated highly by the FDA. You can only make certain claims. You can only say certain things about them. Now, you can put things in your sunscreen that can actually enhance the formula, but you can't make claims for it. And so the claims have to do with whether or not it is water resistant and whether or not it is broad spectrum and achieves the highest standards. Okay, so, but Neutrogena makes some good sunscreens. So that part we know.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you mentioned makeup. Do you remember the brand of the makeup?
It makeup.
It. Okay. And I'm actually somewhat familiar with that brand. And you said something about it's white makeup, or what did you say? No. I misunderstood you.
No, I just said that I put on sunscreen, then that makeup.
Okay, then that makeup. I thought I heard white makeup.
Yeah,
I'm
I
thinking
actually like that makeup. It's good.
Okay, yeah, that's not
And
bad.
I think the SPF of that is something like 50, maybe.
And today with makeups, unless it's specifically a sunscreen that has been tinted with makeups, the FDA doesn't allow them to make the same claims that they used to. They don't have the broad spectrum coverage. So a lot of people wear makeup or mineral powder and they use that as their foundation. And it's just not going to protect you. Plus, even if it did, you need to put a nice thick coat all over your whole face, on your lips, over your ears, on your neck and chest.
Right.
Nobody does that.
Yeah, nobody does. I don't do that.
So what do you wash with at night? Same thing? Okay. And then what do you put on after that? Anything?
I have a Clarins product that I've been
Clarins?
using.
Okay.
Some moisturizer.
Is it a cream?
Yes.
Is there anything in it that you can think of that they talk about? Any particular anti-aging technology or anything?
No, not that I know.
Okay. Anything that you put on after that?
No.
Did you ever
And
do?
I've been putting the bleach on at night
Okay, the hydroquinone.
every day. Yeah. And I think it's done something. Not a lot, but I've tried it a couple times. But I've tried to be more focused on it and consistent.
Okay. And do you ever use a scrub or a mask or anything like that?
I have, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I like that. It's fun.
Okay. So let's talk about some of your concerns. When you say wrinkles and brown spots, where do you think you have wrinkles?
Here.
So
and-
what we call the nasolabial fold area.
Yeah, my father had them also.
Okay.
My forehead, here.
So forehead and crow's feet.
Yeah, and I think the brown spots kind of line my face right here. That's where I see them.
Okay. And so in terms of the brown spots, it's the sides of your face.
That's where I see them.
Okay.
I'm sure there could be many other
Okay.
places.
And when you talk about the texture of your skin and you say, gee, I wish my texture were smoother or I had smaller pores, where do you see larger pores?
I think in here and in here as well.
Okay.
All over, really.
All over, okay.
All over. I'm very aware of it, I guess.
Now, when you've gone to the derm, have they ever done any checks for anything like basal cell carcinoma, any type of skin cancer?
Mm-hmm.
And so
I do it like every 6 months.
Okay, that is really good, because when you've had a lot of sun exposure, and particularly if you see any irregularities, sometimes you have like a little red spot, and maybe it looks even like a little pimple, but it just doesn't go away. Mm-hmm. That can actually be basal cell carcinoma. Yeah. Those are superficial. They typically can be burned off, removed in some way. But squamous cell carcinoma, which is a little bit more aggressive, rarely metastasizes, but it can. You really need to get these things checked. And of course, malignant melanoma, that is the most serious form of skin cancer. And that can metastasize and can be far more serious. So you really want to make sure that you do mold checks and go to your derm on a regular basis. What they usually do is they do a baseline check so that they can look at everything. And if it looks normal, then they can kind of map your skin so that next time they can compare that if there's something that doesn't match that normal baseline, then it's much easier to identify it. So I'm really glad you're doing that.
I just had a little spot on my shoulder that I had a biopsy. And it wasn't anything, but it was something that it hurt quite a bit for a long time, and it wouldn't heal. So, but it was okay.
Well, that's good. And there's also something that sometimes people get called actinic keratoses. Actinic keratoses are precancerous lesions. Mm-hmm. So sometimes, again, you have some of these funny little superficial lesions that just don't seem to go away. And it can actually be precancerous cells. And there are things that they can do topically for that to get rid of those abnormal cells so it doesn't go into skin cancer. So anyway, I'm really glad that you're doing that. Okay. So, and you mentioned your legs, and like most people, I think almost everybody has dry legs.
Yeah.
But I have to say, your legs look like a really good texture, and they have a nice sheen to them.
Yeah, they're pretty good. A little crepey up here.
Okay. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about kind of the category that your concerns fall into. So the first category that I want to address is what we call intrinsic aging. And intrinsic aging is actually only about 4 to 5% of the aging process. That's the kinds of things that really don't have to do with sun exposure, because the good news is that most of what we see when we look in the mirror and we see things that we think, oh, that's inevitable aging, everybody's going to get fine lines and brown spots, etc., it's sun exposure. Mm-hmm. And most of that sun exposure has been programmed into our skin before the age of 10. Mm-hmm. At least 50% of it before the age of 20. It takes 10, 20, 30 years to show up. Yeah. And of course, once it starts showing up, it's downhill. I was just reading a book the other day. It was a biography of somebody, and this woman was saying in this book, and she said, I looked really from the age of when I was 20 until I was 40, I just didn't age at all. And then all of a sudden I looked in the mirror when I was 40, and it was like, wow, my face just changed.
Yeah, that's very true.
And I hear that a lot.
That. Yeah.
So, but the intrinsic aging are things that occur even if you didn't have sun exposure. Now, sun exposure can exacerbate it. So, for example, when we talk about lines in the forehead and the lines between here and what we call crow's feet, that's what is known as dynamic muscle movement. So, dynamic muscle movement, if you lived in a cave, you would make expressions. Mm-hmm. And so those expressions cause certain muscles to overwork. It creates a crease in the muscle, and then when you put the skin over that muscle, there's a line there. Mm-hmm. And the only way that you're going to get rid of them is with Botox. Now, I'm not saying go out and do Botox. We can soften them, but it's just that's the type of line that is. And so dynamic muscle movement occurs typically in those areas. And Botox can actually affect certain other areas on the face, but that's what that is all about. Now, the other types of fine lines and wrinkles, those are sun exposure. And then the other thing that in terms of extrinsic aging that you're talking about, is the cheek pad, which typically is the highest point of the face. So this has to do with volume. As much as 50% of what we perceive as aging has to do with loss of volume. And volume has to do with fat, but it also has to do with certain hygroscopic agents, in particular hyaluronic acid. Mm-hmm. And hyaluronic acid is something that we have tons of when we're born. We produce less of it, particularly when we get into our 20s and 30s, we produce less. Also, as estrogen levels drop, estrogen has an influence on hyaluronic acid, so we have less hyaluronic acid. But generally, the highest point of the face is the cheekbones, and then the face narrows down into a defined jawline. As we age, the cheek pad moves down. As the cheek pad moves down, and this happens in everyone, you get a nasolabial fold. And then what happens is that eventually the jawline becomes the widest part of the face. As the cheek pad moves down, the female face becomes more masculinized in appearance.
I've noticed that.
As the cheek pad moves down in men become more masculinized in appearance. But the thing about that is we look at that and we're very complimentary. Doesn't he look rugged? Isn't he becoming more handsome? Blah, blah, blah.
They look good.
Yeah. Now, there are things that we can do topically that can actually, to some extent, the appearance of that can improve, but it doesn't replace cosmetic surgery. And then there's other things that happen over time. There's bone resorption. As bone resorption occurs, usually that's more in the 60s and 70s, although you can get a little bit of it before then. But it's not just in your torso, but it's in your face as well. And so kind of what happens is you have too much face for your bones. So I just kind of like to realistically separate out what we can address, because skincare doesn't replace cosmetic surgery, and cosmetic surgery doesn't give you good skin. Okay, so what we're talking about is we're really talking about overall skin rejuvenation. Overall skin rejuvenation, the way that I define it, is not just fine lines and wrinkles, but it's discoloration, it's mild to moderate acne, it's rosacea, it's all the common skin concerns that we would love to kind of get rid of. And if we looked in the mirror, we go, oh, I don't need foundation, I don't need, my pores are nice and small, I have great smooth texture, all those kinds of things. So that's kind of what we want to address. Now, from what I'm looking at, from what you said, the number one thing that I think is discoloration. And they've done studies where they've shown pictures of individuals who maybe are older and they have fine lines and wrinkles, and other people who are younger that have discoloration. And oftentimes people are judged older that have discoloration than lines and wrinkles. So one of the things that makes a huge difference is if the skin is more uniform and if it's bright and reflective and it has really refined texture, it just looks so much younger. And even if people who haven't had cosmetic surgery, if they really have that sort of healthy, glowing skin, it just looks youthful and vital.
Yeah, I like
exactly.
that look.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. And so that's kind of what we're going to go for. Okay?
Yeah, I feel a dullness.
So, and there's just so many things that you can do in that area. Now, you can spend huge amounts of money on products that don't do much of anything, but there are technologies out there that really do have good validation. And I always emphasize this, but this is one of the reasons why I have these discussions, because I want to focus on what you want to change or improve. Not just what is the latest buzzword, what can I go out because somebody says, okay, this is supposed to be the most terrific ingredient ever invented, but what are you really trying to change or improve, and what validation is there to do that? Okay, so here's what we're going to do. First of all, I am going to put you on our skincare management system. Now, I am going to select for her the normal combo, and the reason why is because even though she says her skin is dry, she's using basically a cleanser and a sunscreen, no moisturizers or anything. And I think that with the amount of hydration that's in the system, that your skin isn't going to feel dry. Now, if you said my skin still feels dry, then we would make a modification.
Do you think it looks dry?
I don't think it necessarily looks dry. I don't think that your skin her skin does not look flaky. Her skin doesn't have a parched look to it. But a lot of times, even people with normal skin, even combination skin, if they're outdoors as much as you are in the elements and they're not using sufficient moisturization, they can feel drier.
Like I could use more moisture.
Right. So that we kind of have to see how your skin responds, and you might say, wow, it's just really hydrated, it feels really hydrated. So one of the number one things that we can do to make your skin look like it's just glowing and vibrant is something that I call resurfacing. Resurfacing is typically accomplished with a combination of acids. I know that sounds really harsh, but no. Acids actually in this particular case we're talking about glycolic, salicylic, and azelaic acid. And what they typically do is glycolic, for example, can dislodge and sort of unglue the cellular cement or the bonds between cells. It causes them to lift naturally. It does it without abrading the skin. And it makes the skin just look incredibly smoother, makes it look softer. And glycolic acid actually is categorized medically as a hydrator because it stimulates certain hygroscopic substances in the skin that give the skin volume and give the skin hydration. When we put the three acids together, glycolic, salicylic, and azelaic acid, for example, is sold by prescription for acne, sold by prescription for rosacea. And when we put those three acids together in terms of resurfacing and making the skin look brighter and just making it look a lot more refined, glowing, it's the best resurfacing agent I've ever seen. So that is in the system, and there's other things in here. So there's a cleanser, there's a lipid-soluble C with something called DMAE, which helps to make the skin look a lot more contoured. There's a very dramatically effective hydrator in here, and then there's a sunscreen. And I will tell you what I love about the sunscreen. Love, 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 love. First of all, it has the highest protection that you can give a sunscreen. People that are very active always say to me, one of the reasons they love it is because if it gets in their eyes and they sweat, it doesn't burn. But it has an unlimited oil capture system. If you have a tendency to be, at times, to be a combination, it will absorb the oil, but it cannot absorb the actives and it can't absorb the water. Any place where you're dry, you'll feel soft and silky. This is a cult favorite. I even wear this indoors because just my skin just feels so good with it on. It feels good. Now, the other thing that we're going to include, just grabbed my hair and pulled it, is we're going to include the Marini Luminant Face Lotion. Now, this is a product that's designed to address discoloration, to even out the appearance of the skin tone.
Should I discontinue what I'm using now?
Well, I always tell people, I never tell people to discontinue things that have been prescribed by their physician. So that would be up to you, but if your doctor agrees. But here's what I'm going to tell you about this product. This product was actually, there's a study that was actually presented in the Journal of Drugs and Dermatology, which is a peer-reviewed medical journal. It went half-face comparison, head-to-head, with 4% prescription hydroquinone. And guess who won?
Really?
Yes. Now, hydroquinone, I have nothing against hydroquinone. It's very controversial. There are many parts of the world that they don't allow it to be sold, or it's very difficult to get.
Yeah, somebody told me not to do it for too long of a time.
Well, that's one of the things. It wasn't meant to be done indefinitely, and there can be side effects. Now, you don't appear to be having any side effects, but some of the side effects when the higher percentages are used are blue-black pigment, for example. And it's a type of pigment where just like it sounds, it's blue-black pigment and it's permanent. And a lot of physicians would prefer to have an alternative to hydroquinone, but over the years, we really haven't had alternatives that have been able to surpass hydroquinone. And of course, if you're a physician, you're probably going to use whatever your patient demands because they want to get the best result and make the patient happy. So there's two things with dealing with pigment. Now, hydroquinone is what is known as a phenolic compound. Phenolic compounds are paradoxical, so they can lighten, but they also can have rebound pigment and also have where you can get this blue-black pigment. And phenol also is used in things like phenol peels. The phenol peel was something that was popular years ago. They still use them sometimes, really, really deep peel. But for example, if you went and said, oh, I want a phenol peel, and oftentimes what you do is you go off to a place where it's like maybe some type of a medical facility, and you stay there for a couple of weeks. And it takes that long to heal. Well, what happens is, not only does it remove every line and wrinkle on your face, these things are really dramatic, but it also permanently can lighten the pigment to some extent. So what happens is unless you're very fair to begin with, you have a line of demarcation. It's like, that's interesting, you've got this one color here and one color here. You see a lot of that in Florida with people that are older, that have had phenol peels. And the reason they can't take the peel all the way down, let's say, and even it out, is because phenol can be toxic. So you can only do it to a certain amount. So at any rate, hydroquinone is a phenolic compound. Now, it's also what is known as a tyrosinase inhibitor. And tyrosinase inhibitors are things that interact with active tyrosinase in your epidermis, and they help to prevent pigment from being thrown off abnormally or limit the amount of pigment so that the skin becomes more uniform. That's how they typically work. So in luminant face lotion, we have lots of tyrosinase inhibitors. And we have things like alpha-arbutin, we have things like dipotassium glycerol, which is a chemical in licorice extract, and we have hexoresorcinol, and I could go on and on about the variety of these things that help the skin to look more uniform. But in addition, every single person has a hormone that's floating around in your body, and it genetically determines how you're going to react to the environment and how you react to the sun. For example, somebody could be a redhead, and they could go out in the sun every day, and all they would ever do is burn and never tan. And someone else, maybe they're Hispanic or they're Asian or African American, and they just sit in a hot car and they pigment. You know, they get very little sun exposure, they pigment. You also have more of this hormone if you're pregnant and if you're on birth control pills. And so one of the things that we need to address is we need to address ways in which we can also factor that in. And hydroquinone doesn't do that. The other thing is that this has turmeric. Now, turmeric is a really powerful tyrosinase inhibitor, and turmeric also is very anti-aging and very anti-inflammatory. It's such a great brightening agent that in India, for centuries, women would put turmeric on their skin, and oftentimes before, let's say, an event for 3 or 4 days, and even in that period of time, they would look brighter. But the total time they're wearing it, they would be bright yellow. So anyway, some limitations.
Yeah.
And so over the years, companies have used like turmeric root, and they've used turmeric extract, but it's very weak. This is the first time we found a way to actually take the active chemical and make it colorless. So it tends to be, you know, anti-aging in terms of the appearance of just your skin overall, anti-inflammatory, as well as just making the skin look brighter and look more uniform. So this also has retinol in it. And retinol, next to glycolic acid, those are probably the 2 most documented agents topically for being able to address the appearance of a lot of aging. So this is going to enhance your basic system, but it's really, I think, going to make a big difference in the pigmentation. And I'll tell you, when I was doing proof of concept on this product, we had somebody who, this is before we went into our outside studies, and I was just trying to determine, am I really onto something here? And we had candidates who came in, we bring candidates into the corporate office, and we put them on a protocol, and we monitor them. And there was somebody in her late 30s who was like one big freckle. Freckles are really, really difficult to address.
Yeah.
And literally within 2 weeks, they were almost gone. Wow. I'd never seen that before. So I really feel this is something you're going to enjoy.
Do I need to be careful with sun exposure?
If you're wearing sunscreen, no, this is not going to make you sun sensitive.
Okay.
How
about like waxing?
With waxing, what I tell people is that there are 2 things that you can do. You can either stop using it because retinol can make your skin, it does
that's
is,
happened to me before.
It's not so much the sensitivity, what it is that it thins the stratum corneum. Now, as you age, one of the questions I get asked is, if I use these products, won't it thin my skin? And I have kind of a sarcastic answer. I say, I hope so, because as your skin ages, 2 things happens. Your stratum corneum, which is what you look at in the mirror, it actually thickens as you get older. And when it thickens, your pores look larger, and it looks duller, and you see fine lines, you see textural changes. But your dermis, which is 80% collagen, it thins. So what you want to do is you want to thicken your dermis, but you want a really thin stratum corneum. The more thin your stratum corneum is, the more refined it looks. When you look at a baby's skin, somebody who's 8 or 10 years old, 12 years old, their skin has just looks so translucent, a very thin stratum corneum.
Yeah.
And it's also a better barrier. It's healthier, it functions better. So you're going to be wearing a sunscreen, so you should be just fine.
Yeah.
So one thing is that you can stop the retinol, stop this product a day or two ahead of time.
Before a waxing.
Before waxing.
I've done that in the past.
The other thing is that when I used to wax, what I used to do is I would always take and have the person put on a thin layer of powder. It could be baby powder, very fine face powder. So it's covered with it.
Wax.
The wax sticks to the hair, but it can't stick to the skin. Okay. And that works well as well. Yeah. But to be on the safe side, stop it a day or two. You've done that and you've found that works fine for you.
I've forgotten too, and I've...
Yeah, if you forget, then sometimes you end up with kind of a little bit of an abrasion on your skin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's a good thing to mention. Thank you. Okay, so now the other thing for body skin. So I'm also going to recommend for you, so I'm putting you down for the Normal Combo Skincare Management System, the Luminate Facial Lotion. And then for your body skin, we actually make a glycolic body product.
I've never tried that.
And also a body scrub. So you don't have oil glands on your legs, your arms, and that is, I mean, just inherently you're going to have drier skin in those areas. But also the skin builds up, and you know what we want is when we, particularly since most people don't wear pantyhose these days, we want. Boy, I'm going back a lot of years with the pantyhose, aren't I?
Yeah.
But you know, we like our legs to have that soft, smooth look and look hydrated and have that kind of nice sheen. And as I said, you really do have a nice sheen to your legs.
Thank you.
But one of the things that we can do, just putting lotions on the top is great for sort of sealing in water and hydrating the skin, but it doesn't really speak to making them look a lot smoother and resurfaced and look much more refined. So a glycolic acid body scrub, which I think you would really enjoy, and then using a glycolic hand and body. The other thing that I recommend is that what you should do first, if you have really dry body skin, is put on a heavy, some type of cream. You're not going to break out on your legs. You're not going to break out on your arms. You don't have oil glands there. But what you want to do is you want to keep water from evaporating. You want to seal it in. So, for example, a really good product is CeraVe, which comes from the drugstore.
I've used CeraVe.
And they make a very heavy moisturizing product. But there's a lot of heavy moisturizing. It's really a matter of what you like. So put that on. That's going to, as soon as you get out, that's going to keep the water that you've absorbed during your bath or your shower from evaporating. Okay. Then put the glycolic acid over the top, and what that's going to do is it's going to resurface your skin, and you're going to notice a big difference. Plus the glycolic body scrub, okay?
And then you put it on, and do you scrub it off, or? Well,
what I like to do, and everybody has probably their own method, but I like to get, by the way, I don't like loofahs. Loofahs, if they're made out of the natural material, you have no idea how much bacteria they can collect. Yeah. And unless you're boiling them every time.
Yeah.
There was actually, there was a sort of a mystery case in one of the medical journals where a woman had some type of a rash for years and years. I mean, they couldn't figure it out. And it turned out finally to be her loofah. Mm-hmm. So you want something that's synthetic, but there's a product, I used to call it a buff puff. Now, I don't know, they still make them, but I don't think they call it buff puff. It is a synthetic sponge that's very rough, and I love to put that on or put the body scrub on and go over it with that because it just makes your skin smooth like velvet. Mm-hmm. So, or if you just want to use a washcloth, that's fine as well.
You can use a washcloth
as well. Yes, exactly. Okay.
So the heavy cream and then...
Right, then the glycolic.
And then take it off. And how often do you recommend doing that?
Well, you can actually do it... it really kind of depends on your tolerance, but I'm going to say at least 2 or 3 times a week. Some people actually sometimes even do it whenever they shower. For other people, that might be a little too much. Mm-hmm. It just depends. You kind of have to find your level of tolerance.
Okay.
Any questions for me?
Not so far.
You excited?
Yes, very excited.
Oh, good.
I love this kind of stuff. I get excited about it.
Thank you. Well, I'm so glad that you were actually able to come in.
Yeah.
And that
Me
you got
too.
referred, and I can't wait to see how you respond. What we're going to do is we're going to check back with you probably in 4 days. 4 days is the time period, about 4 days to a week, when people actually make a decision whether they're going to use a product or not.
Okay.
And the average woman has over $600 in product in their bathroom that they don't use.
Yeah.
We'll also check back with you again, and if we need to modify, we need to do anything, we'll continue to check back with you. But there may be some things that I have in mind that I'm going to add into your program once you we see how your skin settles in.
Mm-hmm.
Because I always say that if you tell me in a month or two, Jan, my skin is as good as it's ever been, this is the best that I've ever had my skin.
Yeah.
I can make it better. So we keep working, and there's things that lifestyle, seasons. There's different things that your skin may be doing different things, and of course we're all getting older every day. So we'll continue to work.
I did a question on the product for the lightening of my skin. Do I put it all over?
Yes.
Okay, not just in that particular.
You put it all over your face because this is something that even if you didn't have specific discoloration, it just makes your skin look luminous, and it's very, very anti-aging in terms of the appearance of fine lines and wrinkles and texture.
And what
it
was
has
that called
retinol in
again?
it. This is the Luminant.
Lumen. Okay.
The Luminant.
Yeah,
Yes.
that would be fine, even if I did stop my other product.
Yes.
Okay. I think I'll do that.
So that concludes our session for today. I want to remind you again, please, please, please subscribe. And thank you so much for watching. Bye.